So Chris, you mentioned that you did some mining in the past. Can you explain like your setup and how you got into it? And maybe what has changed since then?
Sure, I can riff on that a little bit. So I mean, number one, we weren't mining Bitcoin. Um, so my intro to it was actually probably one of the bigger touch points. Well, I mean, it was probably the biggest touch point for me getting into the space. I mean, just like everybody else, and like the story I just shared earlier, everybody has a lot of different touch points along the way, hearing about Bitcoin, hearing about crypto. So it was it was in 2016. 2016 early on, I started kind of pulling up articles again, as the space was heating up about Bitcoin, and starting to kind of just dip my toe in terms of what the heck is this thing. So, anyways, it was mid 2016 that my buddy ended up buying some mining rigs, and he had classified them as Bitcoin mining rigs, and I think he was mining Bitcoin. I think at the time he might have been mining Bitcoin through NiceHash, which was like a just a pool. Um, but the rigs that he bought were graphics card rigs, and I don't know how closely he was kind of keeping track of some of the calculation and stuff like that at that point. I think he was maybe just profitable on it, maybe not. I don't know for sure. I don't know. So I don't know his numbers of what he was making on NiceHash exactly, or at least I don't remember. But he did that in the middle of 2016. And then we had kind of talked back and forth, kind of on and off. And I thought that was really interesting because I never would have pegged Kevin to buy mining rigs for Bitcoin. He's a really tech guy, but I never would have pegged him for that. To jump into those waters. Anyways, he knew a guy through work that had set up like kind of a massive graphics card farm, which this guy was running hundreds of GPUs, and he was mining Ethereum. I'm pretty sure this guy, or at least I know when I started partnering with Kevin, this guy was doing Ethereum. So, anyways, kind of fast forward a few months, so end of 2016, start of 2017. And I'm trying to remember, are those the right dates? It's kind of right at the end of. Hold on, let me pull up my. It's funny because I think of everything in terms of the Bitcoin price now, so I need to. What are the dates on this? June. Okay, wait, that's 19. So what is this year? So this is the end of 17. Okay, sorry. So I gave you the wrong date. So it was middle of 17 rather. Middle of 17 that Kevin does that. So anyways, end of 17, start of 18. So we kind of partner together. And because I went to Kevin, I was like, hey, look, I'm kind of interested in this mining thing too. I want to see how it works and stuff like that. Do you want me to buy out some of the equipment? We'll go 50-50, blah, blah, blah. And we'll do some mining essentially. And but what I was telling Kevin was, look, I think we should mine Ethereum instead of Bitcoin, and maybe even mine some speculative coins. Again, that was the time when the ICO craze and all these little coins were going off. I was like, hey, let's mine some of these other ones. So we did that. And I mean, long story short on that whole thing, and let me know kind of what parts you want me to expand upon or not. But long story short on that is over all of 2018, we mined. And I think we started off on speculative coins. I think Electronium was one of the big ones. That was actually a decent call. The problem is our execution was just kind of off on a lot of different parts of the whole thing. Number one, when we're mining, we should have been selling, especially those speculative coins. We should have been selling into the market almost immediately. We weren't. Number two, some of the reserves that we had to trade, and we were using some of the reserves to trade as well. We should have been a lot more kind of scientific about how we were doing that as well. But eventually what happened is kind of middle of 18, we were still mining Ethereum for a long time during 2018, really until Bitcoin's final dive from 6,000 to 3,000. We were still mining profitably with little profit. So we were still coming out ahead mining the Ethereum rather than buying it straight up. So we switched over, I think fairly like March or April, we switched fully to Ethereum. And we did that. During that time, actually, we switched out a lot of the graphics cards. We upgraded a lot of those. And we got pretty specific. Like we learned how to do like the BIOS upgrades and kind of just to maximize the output that was coming from the graphics cards themselves. So we took it to the limit. Like I think we did a fairly decent job, or just some of our execution on some of the other points was a little bit off. But let me say this to kind of just to wrap up a little bit of my thoughts. Mining is a fairly simplistic formula, and I might be oversimplifying here a little bit, but there's really just like, if you're at the bare bones, there's two costs. Number one is your capital cost, which is your cost of your equipment. So the cost of the actual miners themselves, the hardware. And then number two, it's your variable cost, which is your electricity cost. And the electricity cost is really the thing that you have to get right, because if you have an electricity cost that's near zero, then you can mine for a long, long time. And that's really what you want in the mining game, is you want longevity more than anything, especially if you're in the Bitcoin game, because the Bitcoin hardware is so specialized. You can't do anything else with that hardware. So as soon as it's dead, it's dead. You can't resell that, really. If you're going to resell it, you're selling it pennies on the dollar. So you want longevity, which means you need your electricity costs near zero. So that's kind of my high level thoughts, and we can expand from there.
Where in the United States would you find those near zero electricity costs?
Yeah.
Go to a
Um,
farm, or where about?
yeah. So the first thing to understand about some of the electricity costs and about, like, if we're talking Bitcoin mining in particular, a lot of the energy sources are actually renewable sources, but maybe not renewable in the sense that you're thinking about. So one of the big, there was, I think, so CoinShares is a pretty big research, like crypto focused research group. And in 2019, they put out a energy report that kind of broke down the research that they had been doing in terms of how the Bitcoin mining landscape was coming together, geographically and from an energy usage standpoint, because those are always kind of the two biggest things. People like to throw a lot of FUD out there in terms of mining power is controlled by China, and then number two, how it's so bad for the environment, all this mining. So what they ended up finding was that it's actually a bit more spread out. It's still actually a lot of power comes from China, but there's a good reason for that. But it's actually spread out pretty well geographically among the countries. And then number two, in terms of where the energy source is coming from, I think they said like 70% of the energy sources was coming from renewable energy. And most of that renewable energy is actually around hydropower. So the reason why China has historically had a big share of the mining power is because when China was ramping up in this whole industrialization process, or whatever you want to call it, that they've been going through, they ended up kind of pre-planning a lot of their cities and stuff like that. And by doing that, they ended up building up a lot of excess hydropower that actually was not being used. So the thing there is they had a lot of dams and hydropower that was pushing energy out into the market and into the grid. But since it wasn't being used, the cost of that energy for anybody consuming it was near zero. And to today is still near zero for a lot of those regions. So so that's why so many miners pop up in China, is because the cost of electricity is almost nothing.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you could say, okay, well, yeah, you could probably find that some places in the U.S. To be honest, I'm not an expert in the space by any means. I'm sure you could do some research and probably find some spots where that is true in the U.S. I'm not sure where those are, or how to start looking for that necessarily, but I do know that that's one of the things you would want to look at. Here's another big thing though, and one thing that's actually playing out right now as we speak in the United States. There's actually a new process that's being pretty heavily touted, which is taking the excess gas that comes off of natural gas mining, or whatever you want to call it. But when you're like mining for natural gas, you have to flare off the excess gas that's coming off. Again, I'm not super scientific because I don't know all the necessary terms here, but there's some excess gas that comes off that actually those miners just burn off. So they burn that off into the atmosphere. And what people have found is they've found a way to take that excess gas that's coming, turn that into power to power a turbine that then powers a Bitcoin miner. So this is basically, so what you can think here is that those mining fields that had that gas that they were just burning off, they were burning that off and they were getting zero profit from that. Well, now what they can do is they can sell that for pennies on the dollar to somebody who wants to come in with a Bitcoin miner. And now they're not making a killing on that, but at least they can take that thing that they were burning off, for zero yield. Now they can turn it into some yield, and then a Bitcoin miner can come in and they can mine the Bitcoin, and they can take their profit and they can run off. So it helps everybody along the chain. So that's one thing that's happening, and this will sound kind of goofy, but the other way to do it is to find a way to get some free electricity somehow. So, I'm not going to talk specifics here, but there were some sources that popped up during our time of doing this that offered us free electricity because they had somehow gotten free electricity on the grid. Hey, hop in this garage or this shed with us, and now all of a sudden you'll have free electricity. If you find something like that, and you're going to be able to keep that low and quiet, that's obviously another option. But the question for that is like, how long does that last?
Mhm.
So those are a couple things to think about. But that definitely is in the Bitcoin mining space right now. I would say that energy consumption or that energy source really is kind of the big differentiator in the market for anybody looking to get in.
So, Chris, question. So I'm a complete novice here when it
Mhm.
comes to, I mean, I know traditionally what mining means, but I don't have any idea of what mining means when it comes to Bitcoins.
Okay.
So my question is, first of all, can you give us an overview, or, just a like a quick description of what exactly are the tasks that go into mining, number one, and then number two, why does Kyle, my you know client, keep saying, oh, I need to get this latest laptop with 16 GB RAM and 2 TB hard disk, and now I am ready to mine? Like, and then you also mentioned energy, right? So once you give us the definition or the overview of the tasks involved, then can you explain why is mining needing so much power or electricity, and such a high configuration laptop to do it?
Yeah. Okay. So so what do you need? What do you need to get started? I guess that's kind of the first question, right?
Yeah. So yeah, Bitcoin is like, I know a bit about Bitcoin,
Or
like it's
yeah,
a cryptocurrency,
what is it doing?
but yeah, what is the need of mining it?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to get too far down, like
Yeah,
how
just
does
high level.
Bitcoin work? The idea with mining is a couple things. So really the big thing with the miners is the miners are taking the transactions that happen.
Mm-hmm.
I send you a Bitcoin, you send somebody a Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. Taking all those transactions that are happening, they pick those transactions up from kind of the transaction pile, if you will, because all of these things are happening. Again, this is a global thing. There's a lot of people that want to make a lot of different transactions. So everybody submits their transaction to the network. And what everybody does is they attach a fee to that. So they say, okay, I'm willing to pay X amount of Bitcoin for this transaction to go through. The miners then are able to say, okay, I'll take these transactions. And usually the transactions that they're taking are the ones with the highest fees. That's generally the selection criteria. Maybe a little more complicated than that in certain instances, but for the most part, it's that. So they look at all those transactions and they say, okay, we want to take this group of transactions and and that's going to be the group that we work with. Along that way, so this is where you've probably heard Bitcoin every 10 minutes, like your Bitcoin transactions go through every 10 minutes, or every 10 minutes a Bitcoin block is created, or every 10 minutes, I can send you some Bitcoin or something like that. You've probably heard some sort of somebody explain Bitcoin maybe that way. So every 10 minutes, that is true. So about 10 minutes, a new block is mined. So basically what happens there is the miners are solving a math problem. They're trying to find basically this hash. They're trying to find this number lower than kind of the target number. So the system has a target number, and this is like a 32-digit long number. It
Mm-hmm.
might be longer or shorter than that. I forget the specifics, but this is a really big number. And the miners take all those transactions and the previous block and some other data, and they take all that and they hash it up and they see if they can get a number that's lower than the target number.
Mm.
And that happens about every 10 minutes. So the Bitcoin algorithm also has what's called the difficulty adjustment, and that adjusts this target number to become harder and harder for it to calculate over time. So about every 10 minutes, this number is found. So when the miners calculate that number, again, there's only one miner that wins. Okay. So there's, realistically, you could have kind of everybody in the world have a Bitcoin miner in their house, and everybody could compete to solve this problem. So what happens if you win? So if you're the winning miner, you get a couple of things. Number one, you get all the transaction fees that you just included in that block.
Mm.
So the blocks have a certain block size, and it used to be pretty simple. The block sizes were 1 megabyte, so you could fit 1 megabyte of data in the block. So basically, however many transactions fit into 1 megabyte, you could include that. Now there's SegWit 2x, and that adds a weighting principle, and so you can have more than 1 megabyte in a block. So you can have more transactions in a block. Actually, that's besides the point, though. The idea is that you can have a group of transactions where you take all the fees from those transactions, and then number two, you get the coin base, and the coin base is the reward on each block determined by the protocol. So right now that reward is 6.25 Bitcoin per block. So you get 6.25 Bitcoin, which at let's just say the price right now is $50,000. It's right about there. So that's what 250,000, right? $250,000 plus the transaction fees. So you're making, let's just say, $300,000 a block if you win the block. So you get that, and that goes into your wallet, and boom, you won. And then the next block starts, and you're competing again. So that's basically what you're doing when you're mining.
Hmm.
Now, really quick, I want to caveat that before we get too far.
Yeah.
Generally, what people do, and what Kevin and I were doing, generally people don't have enough mining power to find those blocks by themselves anymore. There's so many people in the world competing for this now that if you just have, one Bitcoin miner, I mean, the chances of you calculating a block successfully and winning are near zero. So generally what you do if you're kind of a small operation is you join a mining pool. So you basically take your resources, you add it to the pool, and then if the pool finds a block, they split the reward proportionally based upon how many resources each individual was contributing to the pool. So that's generally how you do it if you're a small operation. There's massive Bitcoin farms out there that have thousands and thousands of machines, and they'll probably operate independently. And or there's all kind of decentralized pools out there that basically pop up and they take in power from all over the world. And somebody will be operating that pool. They'll take a small percentage. There's all kind of ways to skin the cat here, but that's kind of how it works. So does that kind of answer some of those initial questions?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a very good background. Thank you.
Yeah. So the one other thing is, like, why does it require so much energy?
Yeah.
Again, this is probably a pretty big discussion. And sometimes it gets political in nature sometimes as well. But the idea here, just on the face value, reason why is because everybody's inherently competing to solve the same exact problem. And because it's so rewarding, again, like I said, if you solve the problem, you win $300,000, like right now. If you you have a $300,000 profit incentive. So if you can spend enough energy, where you can solve the problem for less than $300,000, then you're a winner. But again, everybody's trying to solve that problem, and everybody's entering into the energy market. Everybody has to burn that energy. One other thing to say on this is that this is also part of kind of the brilliance of Bitcoin, is that it takes that outside resource, that outside input. It requires the burning of energy in order, because mining also, the other thing to know about mining is that it's actually kind of the security foundation of the network. So by expending all of this energy, you actually have to re-expend all of that energy if you wanted to rewrite any of the blockchain. So this is again another kind of big topic that you could really dive into, but by introducing all of this energy with the mining, and again, like I said, through this like difficulty algorithm, what you end up doing is you create kind of a solid layer where you solidify the transactions onto the blockchain. And this inherently also gives Bitcoin its value. So inherently, this also drives the price of Bitcoin. The amount of energy that you have to spend to solidify the network, to secure the network, inherently drives the price up over time, as there's a need. It's very circular in nature. As there's a need to secure the network, then it becomes more robust and valuable. More people want to use it. Therein lies more security needed. So it's this virtuous cycle that just keeps kind of eating its own tail. But it makes the Bitcoin price rise, and it makes the Bitcoin network stronger. But yes, there's a lot of energy that is used in that whole process.
Makes sense. And similarly, the laptop configuration. So what was your laptop configuration when you were mining with your friend? Was it very very, very like advanced, 16 GB RAM and lots of memory needed? Or
Yeah.
is that
So
just a Kyle thing?
yeah, this is probably where we'd have to I'd have to hear a little bit more of his thoughts specifically on what he's trying to do. Again, if you're using a laptop to mine Bitcoin, you're probably not going to be profitable. It requires specialized hardware now. what's
Okay.
called an ASIC. So basically, an ASIC is it stands for like application specific integrated circuit or something like that. And basically, what that means is that the hardware is specifically tailored for solving one very specific math problem. And the math problem to solve here is the SHA hashing algorithm that Bitcoin requires for its mining. So you have to have one of those, basically ASICs. If you even want to be remotely profitable, at least mining Bitcoin. Now, Ethereum is also rising right now, and Ethereum may very well be profitable on a laptop. And I don't know. I haven't done those calculations for a long time. I also don't know what hardware he's looking at. I don't know what his energy costs are, anything like that. But for Ethereum mining, you can use a GPU. To my knowledge, there are no ASICs out there for Ethereum. Maybe there are now, though. I don't know. Don't quote me on that one. But anyways, at least when we were mining, you could still use GPUs pretty profitably. But really, it comes down to the graphics card. The graphics card can do these hashing algorithms really fast. It can do a ton of them really efficiently. So it really comes down to that. You actually don't need much RAM at all. And then really the only other thing, if you're going to join a mining pool, you actually don't even need that much hard drive space. All you need to be able to do is fire up the operating system. You fire up a couple miners, so the mining software, and that's about it. Like it's not very. You don't even need a good CPU either. Like you literally spend all of your money on your graphics cards, and then making sure you got a halfway decent power supply, because those might go out fairly frequently. We had that happen a couple times where a power supply will just get burnt up. So for when it comes to a laptop, though, I never considered a laptop, just because laptops generally just aren't that powerful on the graphics card side. What that market looks like today, though, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I would just say that I'd be a little bit skeptical from where I sit right now, but maybe I'm wrong. So, and also I don't know what he's looking to mine exactly, because there might be a little bit of variability based upon the coin that you're looking to mine. So those are kind of the considerations.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So Alex, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I had a question about the energy cost. So is it winner take all? If you expend $200,000 of energy and you lose, are you just out that money, or do you get a portion of it based on the work that you put in for trying to solve that problem?
Well, it depends how you want to do it. So if you join a mining pool, especially, if you're joining a mining pool, you're going to join a big mining pool. At least, I mean, you could create your own mining pool and like take your chances, I guess. But you're probably going to join a big established mining pool. So you're going to win. You're going to win fairly often, which means you're going to be making revenue, basically. You're going to be generating revenue, cash flow. So if you're doing a mining pool, you're taking home some coin no matter what. Does that kind of make sense? If you're doing it on your own, though, then yeah, you might expend $200,000 worth of energy and you might not win. That's the gamble that you're taking. So, do you have enough hash power? Do you have enough equipment to even have a chance? And likely you don't. Let's just say that. You know what I mean? Unless you're somebody who really can step in and make a massive mining farm, then maybe you got a chance, but likely you don't have a chance to win on your own. you probably have to join forces. So does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
Gotta be Elon Musk and have a couple million floating around.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I would just speculate. That's how much you need to have a massive operation by yourself.
yeah, actually, here's one kind of interesting anecdote is I've been hearing, again, I'm not in the market, but I've been hearing again through kind of all the crypto channels and stuff like that that I look at and follow. The Bitcoin specific mining ASICs that I was just talking about apparently are back ordered for the next like 2 or 3 years from all the major suppliers. So when you think about that, like people have already put down their investment towards new equipment that will be delivered over the next 2 to 3 years. The demand is just unprecedented. It's insane. It's just massive what's happening in the space right now, kind of from all angles. That's why I'm so bullish. And it's crazy. And you have to think about that too, is there's been a couple new entrants into that ASIC space in terms of manufacturing chips. There's been a couple new entrants. There will be even more entrants over time, because like think about AMD and Intel. Like they're going to sit there and be like, okay, wait a second. There's this huge market over here for Bitcoin mining that is backed up 2 to 3 years for chips. Why are we not entering the space? So there's actually been a lot of talks about bringing a chip manufacturer to the United States to specifically build Bitcoin chips. And from what I hear, that might be Taiwan Semiconductor in some fashion or capacity. I don't know exactly if that's true or if that's going to happen. But there's a big push to bring some more industry power to the United States. And then on top of that, there's a big push to have more and more miners come in and set up mining farms on US soil.
So Chris, that's a good segue into what I was mentioning earlier. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure I didn't mute myself. So basically, I see a link between what you just said to Tony on the reason why China is one of the top countries, because they have this massive hydro energy reserve that they built when they were getting ready for their industrial revolution. So I also see a bunch of companies like Enphase Energy, Sun Power, Sunrun, Sonova. All these are renewable energy companies. I see a link here between these companies and what you were telling about Bitcoin needing a lot of energy. I can bet you all these billionaires, they might be using the services of these companies to build that renewable source of energy, maybe for themselves. Like, who knows, Elon Musk may have Enphase Energy building a renewable source behind his backyard so he can use it for Bitcoin mining, and that's making the stocks go up. Like, look at that, 594% up.
Yeah.
You see a link there with Bitcoin mining and needing a lot of energy and these energy companies?
Yeah, so I think you're on to an interesting thing that people don't piece together super quickly. But so again, like I said, the energy cost is your biggest cost, and it's your kind of your only variable cost. Again, if you have a big operation, maybe you've got some employees that you need to pay or something like that. But for the most part, the energy is the big dog. So you're right in terms of the fact that Bitcoin in my mind is kind of the freest market that we have right now. And what it's telling us is that there is this kind of big need, and there's this big demand for Bitcoin itself. That's what the price is telling us. And because of that, that is going to drive the demand for renewable energy sources, really efficient renewable energy sources. So if you kind of start thinking about where this ends up, me myself, I'm probably a bit bearish on solar. Again, but that's beyond this conversation. But what I'm very bullish about in general is the fact that Bitcoin mining, whether it's solar, whether it's hydro, whether it's nuclear, whether it's whatever you want to classify as a renewable source, it is going to drive innovation in that space, that we will actually find the best solution possible. Because in my mind, what's happening right now in the energy, like renewable energy space, it's kind of just driven by social pressure and social, like, we want to be cleaner, we want to be better. To me, there's not a lot of profit motive necessarily. I mean, there is in terms of, yeah, we can save some money on energy costs, this and that. But Bitcoin is the biggest energy market out there. And this is, again, it's the only input. Energy is the only input to Bitcoin. So it in and of itself is going to drive people within that Bitcoin market to look for the best possible renewable energy source. And again, if that's solar, then it's solar, and I'm wrong. If it's hydro, then it's hydro. If it's nuclear, it's nuclear. Whatever it is, if it's something that we haven't even thought about, then that's what it is. But it's a profit motive to get to the best energy source possible. And I think that that's going to do a lot for kind of this renewable energy, green earth, talk and space going forward. I think that's going to make it real, and that's going to actually drive forward a lot of solutions in that space. So that's my take on the whole thing.
That's the first time I've ever thought of it like that. Because you hear a lot of the criticism is Bitcoin boils the oceans, but instead it concentrates some of the smartest people, and both intellectually and financially, to find efficiencies with energy, which is the essence of the asset itself. That's a pretty cool thought.
Yeah. So two things really quick on that. Like, number one, you can make better hardware, so you can make better, chips and stuff like that. That innovates every 12, 18, 24 months. And then the other thing is you have to find a better energy source. So again, if the major capital cost is only innovating every 12 to 18 months, well, then you got to find a way to innovate your other cost, which is your energy. So again, it's just the free market working. But then number two is you have to think about this Tesla news as well. Tesla is one of like the leading renewable energy green earth companies out there, and they just put 1.5 billion of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. I mean, to me, that just kills. I think people were right in what they were saying today. That kills the whole discussion around the fact that Bitcoin is bad for the environment, because people aren't looking at it in the right way. People are looking at it in terms of being the energy police, and not in terms of, hey, there's a profit motive here to find the best source of energy that we've never had before. Now people are going to be incentivized to go do that in a big way. So yeah, I think today's news with Tesla really helps that narrative.
Yeah, and a question on that, Chris. So what I am confused about is, so I hear, the current administration talking about green sources of energy all the time. And then I got to know about Bitcoin's energy needs. So maybe I'm asking a controversial question here, so you don't have to answer. because we don't want to get into controversy here, especially when the video is getting recorded. But so typically what happens, Chris, is when it comes to renewable sources of energy, they are a big investment, and usually the governments of the countries get involved because only they have the infrastructure or the capital to build such a huge resource of energy. Like you might have heard of, like they were putting all these solar energy panels in Las Vegas, and it was like a football field full of solar energy panels. And US government was involved in that project, right? So because these are like large scale projects. So my question is like, is Bitcoin right now completely a private, affair with no involvement in government? But then if that's the case, how are these private individuals operating when the energy needs are so high that only governments have the ability to handle?
Yeah. Yeah, you're touching on a couple of really good points. And let me see if I can clear some of that up for you. So you're right. Like traditionally, the government, like there's always been basically a monopoly around energy. There's usually like one company or one small set of companies that provide energy to an entire nation.
Yeah.
That's generally been the model. That model probably sticks for a long time. Let's be honest. Again, I don't have a crystal ball here. Here's what I will say though, is that I think what Bitcoin is going to end up doing for the energy industry though, is it's going to drive some more privatization of it. Because again, think about it this way. And this is something that kind of clicked recently and something that I've been thinking more and more about. And I want to think about this more. What Bitcoin finally allows us to do is civilization, and most of our cities and countries have been set up around kind of major geographical landmarks, generally around like a specific port or, which is generally a really good location, in terms of for trade. Just around like really dense natural resources, whatever it is. So now what Bitcoin will allow us to do is, instead of kind of organizing around these geographical, it'll still be geographical, but instead of organizing around trade ports and stuff like that, and then us having to take our electrical sources and transmit them and transfer them to where the people are living. Well, now what we can do is we can set up cities around energy sources. So again, like I keep thinking about hydro because hydro is the biggest, or it's kind of the most in your face, at least as of right now, example of a really cheap energy source. So if you think about like a massive waterfall in the middle of Africa, what you can now do with Bitcoin is you can take this massive waterfall in Africa, you can use that to power your hydroelectricity. That hydroelectricity can be used to power your Bitcoin mining machines. You can create a massive Bitcoin mining operation right there next to the waterfall. And now you have to bring in employees to, build this thing, to run all these machines. Well, now all of a sudden you need a place for them to live, and you need a place for them to go and eat, and you need a place for them to, get some gas in their car and some entertainment. So now you can build an entire city around this energy source. Mm-hmm. So again, like I said, like I don't know what that energy source is ultimately going to be, and I think it's going to change over time. Right now the easy answer is hydro, and like I said, maybe it's nuclear, maybe it's something else, maybe whatever. So I think that's, again, we're going to be able to go to the energy sources where they are, and I think that'll allow for new kind of companies and people to pop up and service the energy sector. What was the other part of the question on that?
So yeah, I mean, I think you answered most of it. Other part was why won't the government try to interfere and get a share of the new economy.
Yeah.
Like in China, you know how things go in China, right? Wherever they see profits, the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government are there to get the benefit, right? And the people only get a share of it, like a small share of it.
Mhm.
I know US is different, but I know that if you are talking of $300,000, somebody's going to get if they crack
Right.
that block puzzle, then there might be so many other millions of dollars involved. How has Bitcoin been able to stay private so far? And what do you think? Will it continue to stay private, or will it start getting government attention?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So when it comes to that, I think there's a couple different things. First and foremost, it's definitely a potential attack vector. Um, you could have governments come in, or come to miners and say, hey, shut it down. The thing to remember there is that the network is decentralized, and sure, you might be able to get a big miner in China, or you might be able to get a big miner, let's just say India right now has been in the news for being kind of negative towards Bitcoin recently. They could go to a big Bitcoin miner in India and say, hey, shut it down. That's definitely an attack vector. But again, like I said, the good news is that it's decentralized. So you have big miners in a lot of different countries, and that's only becoming more and more so as time goes on. So it becomes harder and harder to shut down everybody. Number two, there actually over the last year, I think I started seeing articles about this going back about a year or so, but actually more and more countries are starting to actually get into the Bitcoin mining business in and of itself.
Mhm.
So either they are directly mining Bitcoin, like the government themselves, or they're subsidizing miners. So, so they're paying for part of the whatever, part of the electricity cost or capital cost, whatever it is, however they want to subsidize it. But they effectively are subsidizing some of the costs that the Bitcoin miners have to attract that Bitcoin mining talent. Now, whether they want to, take a piece of the pie, or they want to earn additional tax revenue, whatever it is, it's going to be different based upon each government. But there are already stories out there of different countries, different locales. To name a few, I'm pretty sure I saw a story out of maybe the Ukraine. I think I saw one out of Russia. And then in the US, I think either Kentucky or maybe a city in Kentucky or something like that. One of the Midwestern states or cities was subsidizing miners in some capacity here in the US. I didn't totally look into the specifics there. But these stories have been popping up more and more over the last year or so. And again, I expect that to only happen more and more as time goes on. So there's going to be this constant ebb and flow, especially over the next probably couple of years, where countries are going to go hot and cold on Bitcoin. The 1 second they'll be banning it, the next second they'll be reinserting it, the next second they'll be getting a court override on this, and then the next second they're going to be fully embracing Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin. It's just it's going to be the natural progression, because I think India has already tried to ban it twice, and I think both times they've been actually overruled in their courts. China's tried to ban it a bunch, but China is a weird one because there's just a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes, obviously. But again, the idea is that there is some geopolitical and some geographical arbitrage there. So if you're getting some heat in one country, you could go to a different country, and again, not the easiest life, not the easiest industry, but it's going to be a little rocky for a little while. That's my take on it.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you, Chris. Over to Tony and Alex. Guys, did you have any questions or any thoughts?
Yeah, I did have something. Chris, you mentioned something really interesting. Like you brought up the point about we have a lot of bigger cities or like ports. Were built on easy access to transport goods and whatnot. And then like you brought up the idea, like, if there's, a big waterfall in Africa,
Mhm.
and if you just kind of like utilize that waterfall as like a place for energy and like great hydroelectric hydroelectric power to kind of like mine this invisible resource, like that's very interesting. And like I feel like this invisible resource, like, can't it like technically be like ever flowing, like like is it, as long as there's consumerism, like won't Bitcoin, there are all of these like transactions in the blockchain, there's always going to be like Bitcoins continue to cycle, right?
Yeah.
Or is there no, or is there a life cycle to Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. No, you're right. I mean, there's a continuous life cycle to it. You're right. As long as there's demand for transactions, then
Yeah.
it lives. Um, people have already started talking about, what happens once we've mined all the Bitcoins. And, again, number one, there's going to be a reward in each block of new Bitcoins until the year 2140. So we're a long ways out, probably past any of our lifetimes. Number two, Bitcoin really is, as of right now, like one of the largest leaps in money technology that we've ever seen. So for anything else to displace it, it would have to be just another massive jump. I don't know how quickly that happens. Again, no crystal ball here,
Yeah.
but maybe it happens in our lifetime. I'm gonna guess it doesn't. But does it happen in 100 years? Maybe. I mean, I don't know what the heck technology is going to look like 100 years from now. But if there's a way to make a better money past the Bitcoin, then the market will shift to that. And what that looks like, I don't know. But none of us can really speculate on that because we don't know what that looks like yet. All the answer that I generally give to this is like, all I know is what's right in front of us, and it's Bitcoin, and it outcompetes in a number of ways. And this is what it affords us. This is what we can do with it. Let's go do that. Let's make it as best as we can. And then whenever we figure out the next thing, we figure out the next thing. And, we'll go do that. So that's generally kind of my answer to that one.
I just had one last question for you, Chris. You talked about the innovation in natural gas, where these miners, real miners or oil people, are taking excess oil and using it to power mining tools. That seems pretty innovative. Do you have any other industries or areas we're probably not thinking about right now that are going to be innovated by Bitcoin in, say, the next 10 years, even sooner, 5?
I mean, that we're not thinking about, I don't know. That's a good question. Look, I'll just give the traditional answers in terms of probably stuff that you're already thinking about, like banking. Obviously banking is going to change in a big way, just because this is entirely new kind of banking financial system, that again outcompetes the current one by in a number of factors. I think actually one thing that I will say is I don't think people think enough about payments and maybe what'll happen with payments. So the cost of payments, number one, is actually already being driven to zero. So there's this product out there called Strike, which is using the Lightning Network, which is built on top of Bitcoin. And they're using that to settle payments internationally at a cost of zero, or at a cost of basically near zero already. So that will be one thing. But number two, kind of the cool thing that Lightning Network enables is micro payments. I don't think people think about what can happen here. And also another thing is with Bitcoin, basically with a completely digital asset, it also opens up a number of interesting possibilities when it comes to like machines kind of talking to each other and interacting with each other. So one kind of use case that I've passed around, that gets people thinking a little bit is let's assume that Tesla can deliver upon the autonomous vehicle era. Let's assume that we can get there to the autonomous vehicle era eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later. Theoretically, what you could do is you could hop in your car or a taxi, and you could basically have like a wallet, be it on your phone or on your car or whatever, and you could actually pay the other cars around you in real time to either slow down or move out of the way or whatever. Again, you could stream that in real time to the other cars, and there would probably be a dynamic market happening in real time, as other people around you are bidding, to get that same priority access. So you could do that all in real time. You could stream it, and let's say you were streaming to be in that priority traffic lane, where you could just zoom through everything. Let's say your wallet ran out of money. Well, then, okay, then the stream of payments ends right there, and your car moves over into the slower lane. Like, it just happens in real time automatically.
That reminds me when you're at the airport and they go, we'll give you a $500 voucher if you catch the next flight.
Yeah. I mean, and then here's the other innovation on top of that is like, sure, you could kind of do that now with kind of the way that, payments are already kind of digital and stuff like that. But here's the problem is you don't get settlement right away. So in the system that I just described, by using the Lightning Network and Bitcoin and everything, you instantly settle. So you're guaranteed to have that money. There is no risk in terms of, the other bank not transferring you that money or going out of business or whatever it is. There's no credit risk there. You get instant settlement. You know that you have the money. You know that your machine, again, the way that I think about this is that, well, now all of a sudden I could just like own a car that, transports people around all over the place. And with that car, I could set up like, a market for it to, get in and out of priority access, or maybe have some better algorithm in terms of how it drives or whatever. There's all kind of different innovation that comes from there. So I think the payments thing is probably something that people don't really spend a lot of time thinking about, and just kind of wondering and thinking through. So I don't know.
So another use case is like, if I want to send my dad $100 right now, he's in India, it takes time. And I have never understood why.
Yeah.
So what Chris is saying is I can send instantly to my dad $100. He'll get it right away, and he can use it to buy his, item instantly. So he won't even have to worry about converting the currency or something, I think, because this is a global currency.
Yeah, exactly. It's a 24/7 market
That's
available
awesome.
all across the globe. Yeah, there's going to be some really cool stuff that we see over the next couple of years, and it won't stop there. It'll blow our minds over the next couple of years, and then it'll be like, okay, this is the future. Now what? And then it'll just be the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and then it'll just be normal. Again, this is kind of my theory. I keep telling everybody in 10 years, everybody's going to have Bitcoin. That might even play out faster than that, but I don't think it takes much more than 10 years. And, again, everybody, meaning like basically everybody, but everybody will have Bitcoin. Again, just like now, basically everybody uses the internet. Sure, there might be some, remote areas and, maybe a country here and there or whatever, but this is like, the common saying is Bitcoin is inevitable, and the further you go down, like, and the more you understand, I think it really becomes real, just how inevitable it is.
The other use case is if I use my credit card from America in India, there's a big transaction fees. So Chris, I think the transaction fees will become zero.
Yeah, there won't be as many people in the middle, trying to take this fee and that fee and this fee. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, this is a completely open network that's available to everybody. There's nobody blocking access to it. There'll be companies to service that and stuff like that. So there'll be some sort of cost. There's a cost to settle on the Bitcoin transaction. Who absorbs that cost and where it is. Obviously, that's the history books are to be written on that, where exactly those costs will be absorbed. But yes, they will definitely trend towards zero, because you won't have as many people in the middle, trying to block access or create these different gates along the way.
That's awesome.
I'd be curious like what would happen to like credit card companies or point of sale systems that rely on like the transaction fees. Like what happens? Do they become obsolete or
Yeah.
go out of business, or like do they have to pivot and like be some sort of facilitator in like the blockchain?
Yeah. Well, you're kind of right. They have two options. Either they jump on board, soon, and they start working in the new financial system, and provide some sort of service and some sort of benefit there, which some will. But then, there'll be other ones that don't, and they'll die off. And then, what'll happen over time? This is one of the other hangups, and I'll probably have to jump off the call soon. But this is one of the other hangups, is that people will generally say like, okay, well, all this stuff is going to go out of business, and like, all these industries will die or whatever. This is just natural progression of what happens over time in terms of innovation and how we get more productive, with different things. What ends up happening is we take all those resources. The way that I think about a lot of the banking sector right now is that it's really just kind of like blood-sucking fees from every single corner.
Yeah.
And what'll end up happening is a lot of that'll go away. A lot of those jobs will be gone. But all those resources, all those people who used to work there or work there now, what'll end up happening is those people will just redirect their time and energy to different areas. It won't happen overnight. It certainly doesn't happen easily necessarily. But people got to put food on the table and stuff like that. We've been doing this as humans forever. This is just the natural progression. So that'll open up new doors, new areas of innovation, new industries. Some people have hypothecated that it'll create kind of a new golden age where we'll be able to focus on all kind of new arts and, stuff like that. Maybe, I don't know. But it's going to open up all kind of new doors. I think one thing that I've told Alex in the investments industry or group that we have at Kin and Carta, the way I see it is, I think kind of this whole like space exploration and expansion and stuff like that, I have a feeling that's going to be one of the major kind of big sectors that get launched, in the rest of our lifetimes. There'll be a ton of jobs to service all that. I mean, think of all the equipment you're going to have to service, all the people that'll, maybe have to go off Earth to, explore these things and, mine these resources or what. I don't know what that looks like. I just have a feeling that that'll be a big driver of growth and kind of just this new frontier, a new industrialization, if you will. Maybe not, but there'll be all kind of new things that we haven't even ever thought of. So
cool. So Chris, you have to go now.
You got one last thing, or?
Well, I was just going to give an example of what you just said. I remember in 2000, I think around 2000, when I came to US, 2001, I met my brother-in-law. He's a DBA, database administrator, and I went to him and I said, "Hey, I'm here in US. What do you recommend I should do to get a good job?" At least I was looking to make 70,000 to 100,000, and he said, "Do programming. If you don't know programming, you can get a job in US." And I was like shocked because I'm not a very good programmer at that point of time. And so I was planning to go back to India. And then I met this guy. He was in digital. He said, "No, you don't need to know programming. You can just learn these software programs that analyze data." And then I started looking into those software programs and I learned them. And there you go. That industry opened from nowhere. There was no digital analytics before. So what I'm saying is there's always other opportunities, like Chris was saying, that open up, Tony, to complement what was gone. And therefore we will see some other sector opening up, and those people who are laid off from banking sector will end up going to those other sectors like space, or maintaining the Bitcoin machine, etc. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I'm
100%.
hopeful. I'm very hopeful. Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Chris. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, feel free
Good
to reach out. I'm in Alex's Slack, so
Dora, get in that channel. That's her. We just post questions, and we've got 8 people in there right now. It's growing, but it's a good spot just to let out some ideas and get some different perspectives around Bitcoin. But you can see it goes in all different directions to space and mining. I mean, just it's such an awesome industry because it's so expansive. But I know you got to go, Chris. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
yeah, no
Once again.
problem. Yeah, like I said, if reach me there, or if you want to set up another call sometime or whatever, feel free. I'm always
Thank
happy
you.
to talk.
Good
So,
job. Thank you.
all right, thanks everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.